So I just saw the new Spider-Man movie, Brand New Day, and just like the other Tom Holland movies, I definitely did take a liking on this one. Even though this is not by Joe Watts or John Watts, the director of the previous iterations of the Tom Holland films. Well, this is from the same director who did the Shang-Chi movie, and he definitely brought along all of these qualities that he did bring along from the Shang-Chi movie that he did, the more martial arts heavy action that he did. And of course this one has a lot more martial arts in my opinion, and of course all of it is incredible in my opinion. And also his use of the camera work is also incredible in my opinion. As in, a lot of complaints of the John Watts' films is that the cinematography looked flat, but in my opinion I didn't really have that much to complain about the cinematography of the other three films. I thought it was decent, nothing stood out, but this one, I feel like he really went all out, particularly the cinematography. Like the imagery and the depth is definitely a lot more nicer, much more clearer, and a lot more element to it. And also, the camera work, particularly in the fight scene where Spider-Man had to face off like a whole group of ninjas in a prison cell. I feel like the camera work is just incredible in my opinion, and pretty much how it swerves and I feel like this is like a much better like choreography of the camera as well. The movie visually is also very amazing as well. To get to the gist of the movie, it's basically Spider-Man pretty much faces the consequences of his actions of this previous film, where everyone pretty much forgot who he is, with MJ and Ned pretty much figuring out who he was, pretty much on that interval. And what's also a lot more interesting is that he's pretty much now buddies-ish, well, reluctant buddies with the Punisher, who had his Disney Plus special like a couple of months ago, which all my friends saw, but I haven't got around to seeing it personally. But I feel like Punisher, just watching that film, is definitely kind of like the cranky dad that's kind of like, oh, you think you can like outsize me or something? Like, you can't let this New York grit or something. Like, I definitely do like his personality in my opinion, like how gritty, yet he kind of loosens up a little bit just when it's a situation kind of calls for it, not when it's like completely unnecessary. Of course, the performances of Zendaya and Tom Holland are also great in the movie, and of course they were both in that Odyssey movie that came out like 2 weeks ago, which again is also a very great film in my opinion. If you haven't seen it, just please do yourself a favor to see it as well. And there's just quite a lot of the movie. Like the main villain of this is, well, not exactly a villain, but it's Jean Grey, who uses her brainwaves to jump into people, like to another person, to another person, to another person, which again very interesting to see Spider-Man not more on the physical front but more on the psychological front. Again, I feel like Jean Grey is definitely very interesting, as MCU is definitely going to introduce introduce X-Men into the MCU fold, even though they had like 20 years plus of film experience with 20th Century Fox and with Bryan Singer. I feel like the main theme of that movie is that you're going to have to move on from things. Like, yeah, even though he's Spider-Man, Tom Holland version did start out as a spunky kid in Civil War, but he's now pretty much a lot more fleshed out and more mature as the film series like continues, and particularly now he's pretty much the most mature and most aware of his own situation that he's in, which is, again, I definitely do applaud that character development, particularly in a lot of superhero movies where the character matures more and more, learns from mistakes. And what I found about this movie is, again, it's about moving on, particularly from tragedy and from what happened to you particularly, and how you pretty much want to deal with that trauma of the previous iteration, particularly with the No Way Home franchise. And of course, with Sadie Sink, who's playing Jean Grey in this movie, who again has quite a lot of repressed trauma, particularly about how the secret agency that kidnapped her sister and just used her for some really inhumane experiments, and how Peter Parker's like, oh, yeah, which is again really sinister stuff. But I definitely do applaud how they do treat like a superhero, realizing that, oh wait, oh, I'm in the wrong in this situation, like, oh, I enabled this. Like, it's not in a way that it comes off as super preachy in my opinion, but it does go in a way where it's like a character
who always establishes like, okay, I'm still going to be learning from my mistakes, and this was like, oh, this is like big. Oop, the camera's already coming loose, but again, this is what I find fascinating, because it's kind of like Tony Stark. He always learns, his mentor being like, he always learns from his mistakes. This is like a really big one that he didn't realize he was enabling this entire time. I'm not sure you can see it behind me, but it's absolutely packed with traffic in the car park I'm in right now. Like, the complaint I got from my last video is that I was like like the sun was like in front of the camera, but now I'm pretty much gonna be like jammed in because there's quite a lot of traffic out here, so I'm gonna be here for a while. Another really big thing about this movie is that Peter is changing, or Spider-Man is changing as well, which is, again, the duality of these characters as pretty much one person is also very interesting. Particularly, it's about who's the most dominant personality of the two, and not exactly like Split, where they're both basically where all the 17 personalities are battling out against the one dominant one. This is a case of a split personality that one of them is going to have to be dominant very soon, which is again a somewhat of a very interesting concept, particularly particularly as it is addressed in the movie, that he has imbalances of hormones, particularly like the human hormones to even now spider ones, which is again really interesting, but also not in a way where it does veer into body horror, which I feared. Thankfully, it didn't go in that direction, but it did remind me somewhat of a quote from Nick Cave, from the band Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, when he says, like, people don't want to change. Maybe they would like to modify themselves a little bit when each year goes by, but we always like to think we're in control. But the whole thing is, we're never in control, which is, again, a really great quote from, again, a very great musician. If you haven't heard of Nick Cave and Bad Seeds, do your homework and listen to more music. And we do, of course, see another Avengers in the movie, being Bruce Banner, aka the Hulk, in the movie. But I feel like he's more of a side quest in this movie, as Peter has a little side quest of the little remote that he inserts in the back of his neck, in the same way that the Hulk has on his arm, being like, it pretty much turns off any like hormones that would affect him, and thus becoming Hulk, which again, a very intriguing concept, which I think was explored a lot better in their previous iterations. Like, I think She-Hulk touched on it. I don't know, I haven't seen She-Hulk, so don't judge me. But again, I feel like this is what it is. Bruce Banner was a glorified side quest to the main big action, being Peter just learning what he's really doing with Jean Grey, and of course trying to reconnect with old friends that he had to wipe out to prevent even worse things from happening. Thank you, Doctor Strange. And also, what's also very interesting is basically the more psychological toll that Spider-Man is placing on Peter Parker, and of course the psychological toll that Peter Parker is placing on Spider-Man. Pretty much a dueling role where they pretty much do both these characters as one person, having somewhat of a self-psychological battle or psychological crisis they're both having. Particularly when Sadie Sink's character, being Jean Grey, does a little mind jump thing, which I'm just going to call it that, which is, again, how he basically he's trying to reconnect with people. At the same time, he's also being a lot more cautious and a lot more careful that the more that she could be, that any of these characters could be possessed by him, or possessed by her at any given moment. So it's somewhat a weird psychological battle that he's somewhat trusting people a lot less, given how really serious his opponent is now. And also, that car, it could not stop beeping. I'm doing a review! Shushy mush! And of course, this movie does pay an homage to the previous iterations of the Spider-Man films, particularly in Spider-Man 3, where Spider-Man tries to save a bunch of models from a building that's partially collapsing. In this one, it somewhat pays that homage when Peter tries to knock out Hulk, particularly with the building collapsing around them, which is, again, I somewhat got reminded of that scene from the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man 3. And of course, there's the scene where Spider-Man saves MJ, which is, again, somewhat of a different take of that scene from Amazing Spider-Man 2, where Spider-Man attempts to save MJ, but obviously she dies, unfortunately. I don't really spoil that specific scene too much, particularly in the film I just saw, but particularly how they treated that scene is definitely a lot more different. Which is, again, even though I find it to a point like, okay, these people, a lot of these references are films that are from the exact same universe. I feel like maybe the references from previous iterations were better, more dealt with, particularly the previous iteration where it was literally the two previous actors, Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, like playing the same character but a different version of it. But I feel like this one got a little bit weird in my opinion. Particularly with the whole fight on the side of a building with the building blocks collapsing on them, and Spider-Man saving MJ, which, again, although it's touching, I felt like maybe we could have done without that, or you could have done it in a completely different direction with it, in my opinion. So for Spider-Man Brand New Day, I feel like this is definitely a very strong entry for definitely one of Marvel's most consistently performing franchises. Like, it's performing well at box office, no wonder of that. And of course, critics seem to love it. Again, I definitely like this movie. But I feel like some of these side plots just went nowhere, or just went in a direction I just didn't get, or just didn't realize, like, why did I have to go that way. But again, I feel like the action scenes, which take a much more different direction from the John Rotts movie, and of course the cinematography is definitely a lot more of an upgrade, particularly with Spider-Man is more vulnerable, more broken. He's trying to reconnect some old connections, but at the same time he is a lot more cautious, given how capable Jean Grey is, like screwing him up psychologically, which is, again, a very strong, very great concept that is definitely, I wish, could have been done a lot more frequently in the Marvel films. But I feel like this particular subplot is definitely done very well, in my opinion. The action scenes are, of course, incredible, in my opinion. The performances of Tom Holland and Zendaya is also great. The Punisher is definitely a very fun character to be around, somewhat of a cranky uncle who pretty much lives alone, which he has that vibe. So in my opinion, this is definitely a very enjoyable franchise, albeit not exactly Spider-Man at his peak top best, but it's definitely worth a while to watch it again and again, and just definitely have a kick of a time out of it. So for Spider-Man Brand New Day, I'm feeling an 8 out of 10 on this one. So, what do you think of the new Spider-Man Brand New Day film? Let me know in the comments down below. Like this video, you can also subscribe to my channel. You can also follow me on Blue Sky, Threads, Twitter, and Instagram, and Letterboxd, and this is Elijah Wells, and bye!